With a fresh cup of coffee cooling next to me and buried in a mountain of paperwork, the day had begun like any other. With the exception of the slight hum of the air conditioning, my office was silent as I went through contracts. The occasional sound of my pen scratching on paper was the only break in the stillness. It was just another typical day in the life of a man trying to maintain composure until my phone rang. I glanced at the screen, and a tiny smile tugged at my lips. It was unusual for my little girl to call during school hours. Maybe she wanted to share something about her day, or perhaps she had forgotten something at home. I swiped to answer, expecting to hear her cheerful voice. But what I heard instead made my blood run cold. "Dad, help me. They took Mom's new son and left me. I'm all by myself." My body went rigid. As I leaped up, my chair scraped against the floor. My coffee tipped over, but I didn't even notice. My heart was hammering so hard in my ears that I briefly thought I had misheard her, but the trembling in her voice told me otherwise. "Where are you, Ava?" "At the park," she sniffled, trying to be brave. "The big one near Mom's house. Daddy, please come." I was already reaching for my keys, my head spinning, and then, through the soft hiccups of a child struggling to hold back sobs, the horrible truth set in. They had left her. My hands shook as I ended the call and immediately dialed Laura. After a few rings, my ex-wife, whom I had once trusted with my daughter's safety, answered, her voice full of amusement. "What now?" She sighed, as if this was nothing more than an inconvenience. "I didn't waste time on pleasantries. You left Ava, alone at a park. What the hell is wrong with you?" My voice was dangerously low, barely controlled. There was silence for a moment. Then, a chuckle. A chuckle. "Oh wow, yes, we forgot her." LOL. She said it so casually, so dismissively, as if she had misplaced a set of keys. Not a living, breathing child. And in the background I heard him. Greg. The man she had replaced me with. The man now playing father to my daughter, he was laughing too. My grip on the phone tightened so hard my knuckles went white. "You forgot her?" I repeated, my voice shaking with barely restrained fury. "Relax, she's fine. What's the big deal? We were in a rush and we had the baby." "She's 7, Laura. 7. You left her completely alone and I couldn't even finish the words. My heart was pounding against my ribs, the wrath scorching through my veins like wildfire. "Well, calm down," she said with another dismissive chuckle. "It was just a joke. She'll be all right." A joke. They thought it was hilarious. Leaving a child, our child, alone in a public park wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, harsh, inexcusable. And they had no idea what they had just done. They had no notion that this moment, this call, was about to change everything. They had no idea that they were about to regret this for the rest of their lives. I drove faster than I ever had before. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles were bloodless. My foot was pressed to the gas pedal as though my own life depended on it. But my mind was on Ava, my 7-year-old daughter, alone, in a public park, tossed aside, by the people who were supposed to care for her. When I finally arrived, I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw hurt. I hardly remember parking the car before I was out, frantically scanning the playground. And then, I saw her. Ava was curled up on a wooden bench near the playground, cradling her knees to her chest. Her tiny shoulders were trembling, and even from a distance I could see her face was smeared with tears. An older couple sat nearby, searching around as if looking for someone. Maybe her parents, maybe the people who had abandoned her. The moment Ava saw me, she lifted her head, and then she ran. "Daddy," she sobbed, launching herself into my arms. Her tiny fingers gripped my shirt as if I might disappear if she let go. I knelt, wrapping my arms around her, pressing my hand to the back of her head. "Shh, baby. It's okay. I'm here." But it wasn't okay, and it would never be okay again. His habit of cruelty toward co-workers and ex-partners was like watching a fortress fall apart, brick by brick. Eventually, the last straw came when one of Greg's main business associates issued a statement. "We do not condone the behavior displayed. According to the recording that is currently going viral online, we are ending our collaboration with Greg." That statement alone showed that his entire company began to fail overnight. So I took a step back, watching in silent satisfaction. This was about justice that Laura had administered, not about retaliation. Ava acted as though she was disposable, but now everyone saw her for who she truly was. The court hearing was approaching, and I wasn't finished yet. On that day, I would make sure nothing was left. Laura had picked her side to conceal herself within her supposedly perfect family. But now that the court hearing was just a few days away, she would have to deal with the fallout. Since the recording had gone viral, Laura's life had already begun to unravel under the relentless scrutiny of the internet. Thousands of people were denouncing her and Greg on social media for what they had done to Ava. Greg's company was failing. Customers had left. Sponsors had cut connections. And Laura, she had no way out of the mess she had made, despite her frantic attempts to claw her way back. That morning, I spent hours reviewing everything with Marcus, making sure we were prepared for court. The tape alone was damning, and the evidence was undeniable. But we also had statements, quotes from a psychotherapist who evaluated Ava's emotional suffering, a school counselor, and even written testimonies from the elderly couple who found her in the park. Laura had no idea what was coming. As I was wrapping up, my phone rang. A second later, I received a text from Laura. "We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long time. Then finally, I typed a response. "There's nothing left to say, Laura." Her reply came instantly. "I understand that you're upset, but we can resolve this without going to court." I sneered at the message. She hadn't acted like an adult when she laughed about it. She didn't act like an adult when she left our daughter alone. But now? Now she wanted to be mature about this? I didn't reply. A minute later, my phone rang again, but this time, it wasn't Laura. I hesitated before answering. "What do you want, Greg?" I asked bluntly. There was a pause, then a groan. "Look, dude, this is getting out of hand," he sighed. "I get it, okay? You're angry. You want revenge. But do you really want to ruin Laura's life?" I scoffed. "She did that to herself." Greg exhaled in frustration. Okay, I get it. You hate her. I'm not blaming you. But let's talk about Ava. Don't you think she needs both parents?" My voice was cold. She needs parents who love her, not ones who treat her like a joke. It was just a mistake. Greg interrupted. His voice was rising, desperate. "Come on, man. She has to live with this now. You don't want a settlement? A contract? Anything?" I nearly laughed. "You think this is about money?" Greg fell silent. "We're done here." I hung up. They still didn't understand. Shaking my head, I stared at the phone for a moment. This wasn't about getting even. This was about protecting my daughter. Nothing, not money, not excuses, not hollow promises, was going to stop me from doing that. That night, I sat on the couch with Ava curled up next to me, watching one of her favorite cartoons. Her little hand rested on my arm. "Daddy?" she asked softly. "Yes, sweetheart?" She hesitated. "Do I have to go back to Mom's house?" I swallowed hard. "No, baby, you don't." She let out a small sigh of relief and turned back to the TV, and I silently vowed to myself I would do whatever it took. Whatever. Laura tried to pull in court. I would never let Ava feel abandoned again. Laura had made her choice, and now I was making mine. The courtroom was colder than I expected. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. I sat at the long table, my fingers interlaced, tension pressing against my chest. Laura sat across the aisle, flipping through a thick binder of documents. Her face was pale, but her posture was stubborn. Greg wasn't there. I already knew everything. I needed to know. She had called me 3 more times last night, sent a dozen texts, alternating between anger, desperation, and false remorse. I hadn't replied, because today wasn't about her. It was about Ava. The judge entered, a tall man with graying hair. He adjusted his glasses and scanned the courtroom. "Miss Carter, you are disputing Mr. Reynolds's request for sole custody. Given the facts, I need to hear your explanation before we proceed." Laura stood, smoothing her blouse. Her hands trembled. "Your Honor," she began, "I acknowledge that there was an awkward incident, but it's been blown out of proportion. My ex-husband has taken one mistake and weaponized it to take my child away." Marcus, my lawyer, took a measured breath beside me. The judge nodded. "And what is your version of events?" Laura forced a tight smile. It was just a light-hearted joke. The judge's expression darkened. "A joke?" "We thought it would be funny." The courtroom was silent. "You thought it would be funny? To leave a 7-year-old alone in a public park?" Laura faltered. The judge's gaze was unyielding. "Miss Carter, do you still believe this was a minor incident?" Laura swallowed. I didn't mean yes or no." Silence. Marcus stood. "Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to present evidence." The judge nodded. Marcus placed Ava's iPad on the table and pressed play. Laughter filled the courtroom. Laura's voice, Greg's voice, mocking, dismissive. The judge listened, his face impassive. When the recording ended, he exhaled sharply. "This is damning evidence," he said. He turned to Laura. "Miss Carter, I see no reason Ava should remain in your care." Laura's breath hitched. "I am awarding Mr. Reynolds full custody, effective immediately. You will not be granted visitation rights until further review. You may reapply after completing parenting classes and a psychological evaluation." Laura staggered back. No, you can't do this." The judge's voice was firm. "This is not a punishment, Miss Carter. It is a consequence." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Greg wasn't here to comfort her. Her parents sat in silent shame, and none of it mattered because Ava was safe. The gavel struck, sealing the decision. Laura turned to me, her face pleading. "Please, you can't just take her away from me." I met her gaze. "I didn't take her. You threw her away." Her lips quivered, but I ignored her. This wasn't about her suffering. This was about Ava's future, and for the first time in a long time, I knew she was going to be okay.